Hello again, this is video 3 of our video series on how to use a beading loom. If you've missed any of our videos, you can find us on our channel or any of our social media, and all the links are in the description. Alright, welcome back guys. So now I'm going to show you guys how to finish up our project and cut the beadwork off the loom. Now there's plenty of ways to do this. I'm just going to show you a simple way to go about this to kind of get the process done faster. Now I like to use tape just to kind of get everything situated in place where you need it to while you're going to cut it off. So I cut a piece of tape into 2 sections, one for the bottom and one for the top. And the tape just kind of gets the thread to stick there without having to move around too much, just so when you cut it off, it's not going to move around too much. So I got the bottom piece set up, and I got this other tape right here, and I'll put it right back over it and kind of sandwich the string right in between those 2 pieces of tape. And all this is doing is just stopping it from moving, keeping the tension on all the string where you need it to be. I'm just going to fold that over because all this is going to be behind leather anyway, so it's just to hold it in place. Now I'm going to go through, and this is the scary part, all the hard work you guys have already done, and you're getting ready to cut it off, I know. So here we go. It's kind of satisfying watching it cut off. Now before you go to the other side, have your tape already laid off, because as soon as you go off and pull it off, you're going to want to do the same thing to the other side. So now I got a tape there to keep the tension. Now you can finish cutting the rest of it off. Set your loom aside, and what you're left with is roughly just the beadwork. And now you can go through and take another piece of tape if you have to, like I did, just to kind of back it a little bit. It also gives the loom string something solid to sew down to under the leather. Now this is just a kind of an easy, simple way to go about this. There's plenty of ways to go about this, and if you need any help with this, we'll be doing videos in the future to help with that. Just to kind of lock it all together. So now we got our finished product. We got our design that we laid off on the graph paper, transferred it to the string, and then we all finished up. And now we got to cut it off. So I got my leather here, and now I'm going to kind of go from a R80 straight edge just to kind of make it more consistent. And you want to go a little farther or a little longer than the actual piece, so you have something like this to, put your clasp or your buttons or however you want it to attach it to yourself. So now that I got my leather cut out, we're going to sew it down to leather. I got my taped edges folded under to kind of give it a backing and to kind of lock my threads in place, so before I sew it, it doesn't come apart. So I'm going to start off my string, and I have my needle threaded, and I'm using a thicker, bigger eye needle to sew it because it makes it a lot easier. Now I'm going to make this small knot. I'm probably going to do it about 3 or 4 times, however many times you need it to make it to where it's not small enough to go through the hole. So just something to anchor it down, like how you would hand sew anything. So just make a few knots. I'll do one more just to be sure. Okay. So I like to start from the corner that you want to start from. And I made it a little longer so when you're done with the finished product, you can just trim it to where you need it to be. but it's always better to have a little more than not enough. So I'm gonna go through and careful for your fingers and just push through and go slowly. And you can go through the bottom side or the top side. Top side hides it a little differently, but I'm gonna weave that back into it anyway. So we're gonna go through, we got our line in there, and we're gonna go through the bottom. Now sometimes I'll use the table to kind of give it that extra pressure so I don't stab myself, because that doesn't never feel good. And especially when you go through those layers of tape, it gives it a little more rigidity, but it's still kind of tough to go through. So here's the finished product of the other one that I've done, just to save time because it's going to take a while to go through. On this one, it's the same idea. I did everything the same, except for I've pre-sewn all the way around all the edges and all the way to the end. So now all I'm going to do is just sew this last edge down. So I'm coming through and I like to go through the bottom right here to finish it off. And like I said, I use the table when I come from the bottom side just to give it that push so I'm not stabbing myself in the finger. It helps a lot. I'm gonna pull through. And go back around. So you're gonna go around, come back, and you're gonna go around again, come back up to the top, go to the side, and come back around and go through the top. So you're gonna keep circling like a spiral notebook, how they kind of come in and out, in and out. You're gonna do that to the edge of your beadwork. Like that. So you're not gonna go straight back down, at least that's how I do it. I don't go straight back down through it. I come up the bottom, and then I go towards the side, and then come back up to the bottom again. So you're going through the bottom every time. And it kind of borders the whole thing. Instead of coming back up and weaving in and out of it, you're wrapping it around the edge of it, and it kind of tightens everything up for you. So I came through the top, so I'm gonna go back around and come up to the bottom again. And you're gonna try to stay in the first line. Otherwise, you're gonna be pulling tensions off the beads. So just go slow, tense, up to the top, wrap back around to the bottom. Always going to the bottom and the first line. See that one right there? I came to the second, so I'm gonna go back underneath the bottom and make sure that I'm going through the first section. Right there. And a couple more of these, about 3 more I'd say, and it'll be done. Now these can be sewn onto your dance dress, onto a cap, onto hats, bracelets, purses. I've seen them on so many different things. The ideas are endless. So I'd say practice, and then make your own style and your own creativity and see what kind of things you can come up with. That's the best part about it, is this is all your own. Just take the information and run with it, and guarantee you'll surprise yourself. So I'd say a couple more. I'm going to cut my needle off. And now I'm left with my beginning string and my ending string. And they're going to be, that one's done. So if you go back around, you're going to have a beginning string and an ending string, and you can basically just tie those together. And if you use sinew, you can melt them together to lock them in place, but we're using nylon thread right here, so I'd say 3 knots and it won't ever come back out again. I wouldn't recommend melting this because it's not strong enough to handle it. time, I'd say. And you could cut that off. Got your excess string. Now here's our final product. The loom backed to our leather. Sew it all the way around the edges. And now from here you could sew it to a dress. You could put buttons or clasp on it and make yourself a bracelet. And another thing to keep in mind is before you start your project, you should make sure you already know what you're making so that you know how far to take your design. Because if you're just making a bracelet, you don't want to make it as long as a belt. But if you're making a belt, you don't want to stop before it gets, to that point. So keep in mind what you're making. Another thing to keep in mind is you can only make your design as long as your needle is. So if your needle is 2 inches long and you got a 30 strand or a 30 row bead, you're never going to get your needle through there. So I would recommend to only ever go 2/3 of your needle size. So if I was going to use this needle, I wouldn't ever go pretty much past this length right here. See how it's almost covering it? Just enough to push through and to pull out the other side. Anything bigger than that and you're going to bend your needle and it's going to be a lot harder to deal with. So the thicker your designs, the bigger and longer your needles are going to be. So there's our design, there's our project. And here's the loom and our finished project from the start of the graph paper to the loom to our finished project. I hope you guys learned a lot and I hope you guys had a great time. And I'm looking forward to our next video. Shusha Nila. Like always, thank you for spending time with us, and remember to check back in with us for our future videos. We got plenty of awesome stuff for you guys in the future. Until next time, head over to our Facebook page and share all the things you guys created using #FollowWatalawa. Shusha Nila.